Okay, for our next example, we're going to use another isolated sound. We're going to have a kick drum going alongside it. Both of them common in electronic music. We have a 4-to-the-floor electronic techno kick. But something that's not common at all in acoustic music are some typical techno claps. And this is just to see whether a very, very famous and traditional piece of kit is any use to us at all when it comes to this type of material. So if we have a quick listen. Simple clap pattern there, but very rarely do we get to hear examples of classic plug-in emulations on this type of material, especially those kind of sustained claps. They sound a little bit polite at the moment. They need roughing up a little bit, and I would probably treat it the same way as I would treat a snare. It has the same kind of upper mid frequency content that's important to the sound, but also you want it to retain its snappy transient at the beginning, and we just maybe need to add a bit of character. Now, one of the compression tools I would use on this type of sound in my mind would be a 1176, which of course is one of the most common and famous compressors ever made. Originally made by Uri. I was lucky enough to own one of the modern models, the LN, and indeed we have that version emulated here by UAD. But again, let me stress that you do not need to buy into the whole UAD thing. You can, of course, they make excellent plugins, but the point I'm making is that the 1176 has probably been emulated by almost all the major and some of the minor software plugin emulation companies. But here you are, and the controls are always hilarious to me on a 1176 because some of them work very intuitively and are back to front how you'd expect them to be. So it always takes me a little while to get used to them, even though I owned the hardware unit for many years. It does have, the hardware does have a incredible feature which is explosive on acoustic drums. It's called the all button in mode. You press all the ratio buttons in and it just does something crazy to the internal circuits. And it's like an incredibly overdriven sound that can really add something if you add it subtly in the mix. It's just far too powerful for what we want to do right now. Okay, so there we have our original, and that's post-compression. Now, I used to use the 1176 on snares all the time because it's quite aggressive. It's also really good for in-your-face vocals, I found. It's got a hi-fi quality, but it's also got like a grittiness to it, which creates a lot of energy in tracks. I can't really hear much of a radical change in the sound. So, let's see the type of controls we have here. First of all, let's check our input. Yep, that's about where we'd like to see it. I made sure I set up my usual just over 18 RMS or roundabouts beforehand. So we really need to start maybe playing with the input and output to get something going on here. And that's done the trick already. Original. I really like the added sustain that it's giving those claps. It's also kind of really sharpening up and defining that transient. The 1176 was one of the first all solid state compressors, and it was based around a different design than the LA2A, for example, which was optical, and it didn't use the Vari-Mu design either. This is a FET based compressor. Without going into the technicalities of that, it just means that this compressor can be incredibly fast. It can give you incredibly fast attack times and really eat into the initial transient. You can see here we've got a really nice snap to our transient, as we've got the attack midway. Now this is where I always get confused, because the controls are always back to front as to how you would expect them to use. So there we go, we're lengthening it there. Lengthening the release. Lengthening the attack. A super fast attack. And super fast release. Okay, now I've got a handle on the way the controls work. Get a sensible setting here, and this is what I really like, because you can pretty much get your input and output in the ballpark, and then these attack and release settings are so wide ranging and so sensitive that then you can start to shape exactly the kind of compression characteristic you want for your source material. Let's compare. Hear how it's bringing out the tail end of that clap? And that's exactly what it used to do for my acoustic snare drums. Excellent. There you go, that's the 1176. Again, another vintage classic, many decades old now, that still holds its own when it comes up against modern electronic material. So what would I use on a snare to maybe have something a little bit more creative, not just trying to change the snappiness? Well, one of the things that I think could work for snare is tape saturation. And there are many different tape emulations on the market. And I'm going to change it up and use one of Wave's tape emulations. I've got a couple of them. I've got the J37 and the Kramer Tape, which is more of a mastering tape machine. So let's use a mono instance of the J37. Let's insert it in between our end compares. So we're looking for something that's going to give our snare maybe a little bit of crunch, maybe just to roughen up that sound a little bit. And we're hoping we're going to be able to get there with our tape emulation. So first of all, let's maybe choose an overdrive setting here. Okay, so let's listen to that. Whoa, that's noticeable straight away. Let's listen to the original. So we've certainly got a more creative effect there. It's definitely roughing up our snare sound straight away. And let's have a look exactly what this is doing. You can see that what we're doing is hitting the input. We've got our tape speed here, which is a little bit lo-fi compared to the more hi-fi 15 IPS. We're on 7.5 IPS. And here we're really whacking up the input and lowering the output. So we're really hitting the tape hard, and we're really getting a nice grungy saturated sound when the tape itself is getting overloaded and it kind of creates a different kind of compression, which is called tape saturation. And we can see here we're not even really messing with any wow and flutter or noise level. We can take the noise level completely off, for example, and even here the saturation sound we've got is 0. It's just simply by hitting the input really hard and lowering the output, we can hear straight away that tape emulation, a classic tape machine like the J37, is doing something that can be very useful in electronic music for really grunging something up. So straight away, that's more radical than any of the compression that we were choosing. Let's choose another tape emulation. We've got a couple of different varieties here. Let's use the Kramer tape. Now this is more of a mastering tape machine, but there's no rules, so we can once again choose drums. Let's choose here we go, lots of different settings for snare here. So let's go through these presets. They could be quite a useful starting point. You'll hear there quite a lot of noise has come up. Let's take that right down. Noise is something, I don't know if it can be useful in modern electronic music to add a kind of grungy, kind of vintage sound, but I genuinely like to turn the noise emulation off. That's the joy of having these modern emulations rather than the hardware. And let's see what this snare setting is doing. Here we're at 15 IPS as opposed to 7.5 IPS as last time. Let's listen to the original. And it's doing a similar thing here. We're hitting the record level quite hard. We're not hitting it quite so hard as we were before, but let's try and get a similar effect. And you'll see that the record level and the playback level have been linked. So as we increase the recording level, the playback level will decrease to keep a steady level. Let's make sure we got the right delay setting here. Okay, slightly different. There's our original. There's our grunged up. We can go even further. Let's go on to the next nasty snare preset. And here the flux has been whacked up and the wow and flutter. So that's trying to create a more of a lo-fi kind of effect rather than relying on the hot input level and low playback level technique that we were using on the other presets. Here is another setting. Listen to the original. I think that is a really nice sound. It's really got a nice vintage kind of, it's taken the harshness off that 808 snare. Maybe it's an Ableton drum rack, so it's maybe rounded the top end of that digital drum kit off a little bit. For me, that sounds really nice. Let's have another comparison. I think that is really nice. I would probably use this setting if I wanted to add a bit of character, some lo-fi character, but still keeping it quite punchy, quite snappy. It sounds like an excellent setting. And this one sounds like it's adding back some more of the snap. Definitely. So, I think tape emulation is definitely more of a creative tool when it comes to electronic that snares than using compression. And just just going through some of the presets here as a starting point, you can see straight away that we've got lots of capabilities for giving some character to a snare that has got the same velocity throughout. The sound doesn't vary too much. It's definitely giving it back some of the character and warmth whilst retaining that snap and punch.
Thanks everybody for watching, commenting and indeed liking. We really do appreciate all the support we get here on our Sonic Academy YouTube channel. So if you found this video super useful, please, we'd love you to hit the subscribe button. We update the YouTube channel every week with new content. And if you want to watch some more relevant content, just click on the videos beside me.